Hello ladies and gentlemen, just before I start the rant proper, just thought I'd let you know there will be spoilers in this rant towards the end. I do warn you when they're coming, and that if you want to not watch this and you just want to hear what I think, I really did enjoy Mask of Deception despite the tiny little problems I had with it with the stability in the end, and I would fully recommend it to anyone, although I am slightly worried because that would kind of change if Mask of Truth ends up being a bad game, but yeah. I'm just going to stop now, let you listen to the full rant, so yeah, enjoy. Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here to talk about Utawarerumono, also known as Underwater Ray Romano. I love that name. That is a fantastic nickname for a game with a nearly unpronounceable Japanese title. And I'm here to talk about Mask of Deception, which is the first in a series of 2 games about one particular storyline, which was also preceded by another bloody VN, which I haven't played, and I haven't seen the anime, so yeah, this, I just figured I'd come and talk and rant about it a little, just because I have finished it. I have, well, for the most part anyway, there's some post-game content that's not really anything important to the story or anything, it's just there, so I'm just going to talk about the main plot, because that's what I've done. And I wanted to talk about it because not only did I finish this with did I put a lot of effort into finishing this, but the sequel is coming out, by the time you see this, it'll be next month. So yeah, next month. So, the reason why I wanted to talk about it so much is because that it's a setup game, which is kind of scary when you think about it. Basically, the entirety of my 30-plus hour, I got 32 hours, but I skipped a little bit of dialogue here and there, so I could have taken it a fair bit longer if I wanted to. That entire 32-hour period is literally just a setup. It's set up for Mask of Truth, which is a bloody 80-hour game, which is kind of ridiculous. I don't know how they're going to solve all this shit in 80 hours, but we'll get onto that. And I gotta say, throughout the entire thing, the presentation of the game, the art is fantastic. The voice acting is incredible, by the way. At the end of the game, like the post-credits scene and before the credits, one of the particular characters gets really badly injured. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers for as long as possible, but I'm going to have to talk about spoilers eventually. So, just there's your FYI, I will warn you. But the voice acting is incredible, especially from some of the female voice actors. It's really something to behold. God, one of them starts having an absolute fit, and it's just horrible to watch. Good lord. The music still remains pretty damn good, and the localization too, which is a bit weird. Like, I didn't notice like a single typo in any of the text. I didn't notice anything. I didn't notice any sort of, like, changing of the text to change what it felt like, I mean, they could have done it without me noticing, obviously, but I didn't notice anything in the way of them actively trying to change anything, which is nice, because there are publishers that will try and change the point, especially in, like, the anime industry these days, so seeing everything at least looking like it's fairly on the level is really nice. The stability, however, was a little bit odd. Now, this was towards the end of the game, and I had already been the final boss, and I was going through the credit scene and the post-credit scene. The final boss had a little bit of a frame rate problem, especially in the cutscenes preceding it. It started to stutter a bit, and I'm like, ooh, that doesn't look good. And then in the post-credit scene, the game did the most spectacular crash I have ever seen on a Vita. So, the music in the credits and the music in the post-credit scene were completely different pieces of music, so I don't know how this happened. But when I was watching the post-credit scene and just letting it go, the game was like, oh, I'm gonna crash now. So the music from the credits started playing out of bloody nowhere, which was a little odd. I got an error message, and then the game just stayed on a black screen with the music looping over and over, and it was very odd. I had to close the game. Thankfully, I remembered to save the game after the final boss fight. But yes, it was... I gotta admit, it was a bit scary at that point, but maybe that was just a odd stroke of luck, and I probably won't run into it again. Hopefully I won't run into it again in the second game, but I just thought I'd point that out. So, at the point that I had finished playing the game in my video, it had been entirely slice of life up to that point, and that was like 8 hours in, although considering how much text and stuff I'd been skipping, it was probably closer to 10 or 12 hours. And it does stay that way for the, I wouldn't say the majority of the rest of the game, but up until past the halfway point, it stays in the slice of life sort of thing with a little bit of combat here and there, and it doesn't really get serious until a fair bit after the halfway point, except that there's still a fair few tiny changes up and down throughout the rest of the game, and it's a little bit weird, honestly. It keeps swapping back and forth, and it feels just a bit, I don't want to say the word slingshotty or whiplashy, just because it doesn't really feel that bad. I just played the game for like 4 or 5 hour bursts over the course of like 3 or 4 days in order to get it finished, so I might have been playing it so much that it felt a bit whiplashy just because I was playing it so much, but yeah, it just felt a little odd. Hopefully the next game will be able to keep a more consistent tone, or at the very least make the whiplash a little less noticeable, but it's just very, very odd how it continues to go back and forth. And the funny thing is, you don't actually meet all of the characters for the majority of the game. Like, if you open up the game's manual, for example, the digital manual that they give you on the Vita version, all the characters that are listed in the manual aren't even in the game until past the 20-hour mark, which I think is very weird. I don't know what that's about, but this really does feel like a setup game. They are really taking their time to introduce all their characters. The problem with that is some of the characters you meet really later on don't really get their own, like, standalone scenes to help introduce their characters or all that. Like, for example, you get plenty of scenes alone with characters like Relutier and Atui and stuff like that, but when Jack DeWalt, the swordsman, is introduced at the halfway, past the halfway point, well past the halfway point, he doesn't really get, like, a scene of his own to help establish his character. He just, sits in the background for a bit. I imagine he's going to get a scene of his own in the next game, just to give him a little bit of extra character development and stuff like that. But it's just odd that he didn't really get a scene of his own, and considering how much the story is about to change, spoiler alerts are incoming, I promise, it just feels weird. Like, I'm not entirely sure how they plan on handling this, but who knows? I will talk about the ending and how much it's going to change things in a bit, because, yeah, there are tons of references to the original Utawarerumono game. So the way this whole series works is that there's one game just called Utawarerumono, and then there are these 2 sequel games here that are a straight-on sequel story. And they make tons of references to the original protagonist of Utawarerumono, the original one. So it's really weird, actually. They keep bringing him up. I mean, I didn't know until I actually looked up the original how many characters from the original showed up in the sequel, in the second game. It's very odd. It's like 5 or 6 characters show up from the previous game, and some of them were actually with the original protagonist's harem, it's weird. I wonder if they're going to be able to make the plot in the third game help explain the first one for people who haven't played the first one. Because I haven't played the first one, and I'm not entirely sure that I want to, considering that I'm going to have enough trouble trying to get through Mask of Truth as it is. And while I have built the Mask of Deception game to be, I would say, somewhat newbie-friendly, if you take out all the references to the original game, they do give you a fair bit to work with in terms of being new to the franchise. I just can't help but wonder if they'll continue that with Mask of Truth, or if they'll bring back stuff from Mask of Truth that really needs you, or if they'll bring back stuff from the original for use in Mask of Truth that will end up requiring you to go back and play the original game. And considering that we can't actually play the original game legitimately in English right now, as far as I'm aware, that could be wrong. I probably should have researched that. But yeah, considering that we don't exactly have that. Actually, screw it, I'll look it up. Utawarerumono English, because I really should have looked this up. Utawarerumono English, let's see. Well, we have the anime, but it's the anime. I don't really see anything in the way of being able to buy the original Utawarerumono in English. And it wouldn't be the Atlas translation either, because apparently there's some big bash up over all of that. I don't know what the deal about that is. But yeah, I can't possibly know if if knowledge from the original will be required in order to play the new game, which is kind of distressing. I really do hope that they figure that out. So before we actually get into spoiler territory, I'm going to do what everybody basically does, and I'm going to talk about the best girls. I'm going to go from worst to best. So, just because why the hell not, right? Nekane, fuck her. You'll understand why shortly. Sarana and Aruru, the twins, who you don't even get introduced to at the point that I was at in my game. And it was, these girls are weird. They are very strange indeed, and they seem to be only around to cause Haku more trouble for the most part. Considering how everybody just seems disgusted with him for somehow managing to get 2 slave girls, more or less. It's very, very odd, but, you know, considering Haku's actually a decent guy, he doesn't try to do anything with them, which is probably a good idea, considering something I'll try not to talk about. But yeah, very, very odd, and they don't seem to have much personality of their own, and like with Jack DeWalt, who I talked about earlier, they don't really get their own scenes. Well, they do get their own scenes, but they don't really get that much in the way of character development. They seem really dedicated to the eternal slave characteristic, which is a shame. I would have liked to see them have at least a little bit of their own personality instead of basically just sex-crazy maniacs that can also do magic spells and stuff. They also happen to be the strongest girls in the entire game. Like, in the final boss fight, or the fight before the final boss fight, she took out, or those two took out, like, 3 characters on their own in, like, 2 turns. It was ridiculous. But yeah. Relutier is bringing up the middle here. I don't mind Relutier. I don't think she's a bad character in any way. I just think she's pretty... I don't want to say basic, because she's really not basic. She really is a nice girl and all that, but she is definitely the most vanilla out of all the original girls, which is certainly not the worst thing in the world, but at the same time, I don't like her as much as I do the other girls. Very sweet, though. Very sweet, very cute, and I have nothing against her existence at all, so, you know, I will let her slide with her giant bird. I actually do like her relationship with Kokobo, the giant bird, because she'll be riding Kokobo. Kokobo will walk over to like 3 guys and one-shot all of them, and then she'll go, Kokobo, Daijonbu, and it's hilarious. You have to ask the giant bird if it's okay after beating the crap out of some bloody bandits. Oh, man. Munachika. I know it's a little bit weird to put Munachika here because she's not really one of the main girls, but I like Munachika. Very strong, very, very strong-willed, and she does end up not so much sacrificing herself, but she ends up staying behind along with Atui's father in order to hold back the invasion that happens in the late game. And I like her look, I like her style, and it's too bad she isn't an actual waifu. I wonder if she probably is going to turn up in the true... Great, I can't even remember the fucking name now. The Mask of Truth, that's right. Because in this sort of game, unless you actively see the bodies of the people yourself, they're not dead. They're just not dead. If you don't see them die right in front of your face, they are not dead. They are coming back at some point. I have learned this lesson all too well. And this actually comes back to bite the protagonist later on, so... Nosuri is definitely a fun character, very full of herself, but also very devoted to her craft. I like her brother too, although he's a bit too subservient for my liking. And also her main disgusted face reminds me of the Megusta face, and that just makes me laugh every time I see it. And I would love to show you a picture of it, but every time I look for a picture of it, I can't find one because all the pictures of Utawarerumono, when you Google it, show up the anime instead of the actual game, and the game's art is better than the anime's art, I gotta say, even though the anime is fully animated. Anju, I love Anju, she's adorable, she gets everything she deserves, except not really, I probably shouldn't have said that, but she is just adorable. I love whenever she's around, she's so clueless, and I imagine she's the sort of person you wouldn't want to be around for a long period of time, but with the amount that you get in the game, it's just enough to make you love her character, which is also enough to make it really, really sympathetic when shit hits the fan, and we'll get onto that. And yeah, I love her character. Also, you're introduced to her by getting to see her butt, and she's got an absolutely fantastic butt. You could bounce a coin off it. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but seriously, if they didn't put it right in front of your face, I wouldn't bring it up. So, people are going to wonder who I'm going to pick for my number 2 and my number 1, and you might think my number 2 and my number 1 are obvious, but no, my number 2 is actually Kuon, which is kind of unusual. I wasn't expecting to put Kuon as my number 2 because obviously she's meant to be the main waifu of this game, and she definitely gets the most character development, she's the most developed story-wise, and she's the most developed fan service-wise. But I have this one little inkling issue with her that just annoys me so much, and that's how sadistic she can be. She is, whenever she gets her tail out to crush someone's head with, it is absolutely horrifying. I don't know why she enjoys crushing people's heads with her tail so much. It's the most disturbing thing, and it sounds extremely painful when Andrew gets a face full of the tail. God, listening to her scream, it sounds like the most painful thing in the world. Why does Kuon take so much pleasure from it? It's so frightening. And she does get a bunch of character development at the end of the game as well, which might put her above and beyond most of the other characters just because she got the most character development. But my personal favorite is Atui. Yes, I know. Well, some people are going to be really mad at me for picking Atui over Kuon, and I would pick Atui as the love interest if I could, but obviously I'm probably not going to be able to because this game has no decisions to make of its own, really. But Atui is my favorite character because she's absolutely fucking nuts. I love how at the very end of the game, in the final boss fight, Haku's instructions to Atui is literally, go nuts, I'm not going to stop you, do whatever you want. And all you get from her is a really long giggle. I love her giggle. I love Atui's giggle. It's fantastic. It is the best giggle. And, oh man, and the scene you get with her where she's talking about all her problems while she's also drunk off her ass is also absolutely fantastic. She just gets the right amount of character interaction to make her absolutely adorable. Not to mention when her father shows up, that is the best part of the entire game. Absolute best part of the entire game for me, just seeing her father turn up, who also happens to be one of the Great Pillar Generals. You just hear it in the background. Ooh-wee. Atui! And it's absolutely fantastic, and I love her father as much as I love her, just because they're fantastic as a father-daughter relationship. Yeah, Atui's definitely my favorite. I look forward to spending more time with her in the sequel, although the time you'll be spending with her in the sequel is going to be a little bit weird, because it's about time I go into spoiler territory, because, well, this is going to be very hard to explain. So you spend the majority of the game playing as Haku, and you're developing all your relationships and all your friendships and stuff with Haku, and then at the very end of the game, something very weird happens. So you end up going with Nekane to try and supervise Oshtor's final battle, and Nekane, the absolute bitch, I'm going to call her Bakane from now on, because she's a goddamn idiot, runs out, distracts the main bad guy, and manages to make her brother miss the kill shot. So he ends up taking a lot of damage because of that, and he ends up dying because of it. Because screw you, Nekane. I would run you out of town with pitchforks and torches and fire if you weren't an absolute emotional wreck at the end of the game, because that's exactly where you should be. I hate her. I absolutely hate her. Didn't listen to a goddamn word Haku said and got her brother killed because of it. There's a scene earlier on in the game where Haku makes a fake paper mask and ends up putting on Oshtor's clothes. And he ends up looking a lot like Oshtor, to the point where everyone is fooled except the actual Oshtor, which is kind of funny, actually. So it's kind of great. But then they actually turn that into a plot point. So you want to know why it's called Mask of Deception? He puts on Oshtor's mask and outfit and becomes Oshtor and takes command of his homeland in order to solve everything that's basically gone batshit insane. Like, half the generals are MIA or dead. Brain work with me here. The king is dead. The princess is in very bad condition. And obviously, there's going to be people vying for the throne and all that. So, he's going to take over for Oshtor to try and save the goddamn world. And that is a really weird way of going about things. Because I can't see how this continues like the relationships from the previous game without him being revealed in the first few hours for the liar he is. So it feels like a really weird twist. I don't know if they're going to hang with it for the entirety of the game. They probably are in some way, shape, or form. But there's a sacrifice that is made. Because as soon as it is revealed that Oshtor is the one that lived through it and Haku is the one who died, because that's the story they came up with, Kuon leaves. She just turns tail and goes home. Well, you know, with a little bit more on top of that, but I'm not going to talk about that to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, although we've already spoiled the entire end of the plot, so there's no bloody point. She basically goes insane, but it's really... Man, I don't know how they're going to solve it without revealing that he's actually Haku with a couple hours in. Otherwise, they're basically just going to have to restart all the character relationships from scratch, and it's going to be a very weird thing to work with. I'm not sure what the deal is. I imagine someone's going to find out eventually, but still, it's going to make this a very interesting few intro hours at the very least, which means that it's going to be very hard for me to actually do a video on Utawarerumono, the Mask of Truth, just because it's going to be so bloody weird, because considering that Haku is supposed to be dead right off the bat, getting a clip of the game that's spoiler-free is going to be very, very hard indeed. I also don't know how they're going to fit 80 hours worth of speech and art and what have you onto 4GB space for the Vita, but I guess we will find out eventually, won't we? Hopefully they don't cut any of the voice acting or make it compressed or anything, because I really did like listening to the voice acting in this game. So, yeah, I don't even know how they're going to sort it out in 80 hours. Like, they're going to have to go back to Kuon's homeland to pick her back up again. They're going to have to do some warring with some of the other 8 Pillar Generals. They're going to have to do all sorts of crazy crap. Everybody's going to have to come back at some point, even the characters that are barely introduced. And yeah, I don't know how they're going to sort this all out in 80 hours when it took 40 to set it all up. So, yeah, God only knows. I will admit I am looking forward to Mask of Truth. I really do want to play it. And if you can deal with the fact that Mask of Truth might not be a very good sequel in comparison to Mask of Deception, I would recommend you pick up Mask of Deception and play it immediately. But I really did just go for 20 minutes without with spoiling actually everything. So yeah, I should probably cut this clip and put it in the beginning. But well, yes, I'm worried that it's going to be a bloody sequel game. Not so much a sequel game, but I'm worried the fact that it is a sequel game and that they might not do the sequel very well, which might make the 40 hours you put into Mask of Deception kind of useless. But considering they managed to keep the quality consistent throughout the entirety of Mask of Deception, I am going to not so much hold my breath, but I'm going to keep an oxygen tank nearby. So yeah, that was just a quick rant. I am really looking forward to Mask of Truth. I just wanted to get all of that stuff I had to say out in the open there, and I figured people would appreciate the little bit of a rant, even though the game, even though I've completely spoiled half the plot for you. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, this will be fun. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.